Welcome back to Got No Control podcast. I am your host, RONEK. And before I introduce my special guest, I want to invite you guys to head over to gotnocontrol.com and check out official merchandise, t-shirts, sweaters, posters, and much more. This is a way to help us out to keep doing what we do. Also, our first episode of 2026. I'm excited to kick off the year. We got a lot of things stored. We're ready to work. So stay tuned. And without further ado, I want to introduce my special guest today, Ern. How you doing today, brother?
I'm good. Thanks for having me out.
It's a pleasure to have you here today. And I just want to thank you for taking the time out of the day to stop by the studio and, chop it up with me for a bit.
Of course.
I wanted to dive into your story. Ern one. What is home to Ern and how was it growing up for Ern?
Home is St. Louis, but I grew up in Cali. My younger years started out with the graph scene, like the 80s, 82, 83.
Dope. St. Louis, was that like your just a childhood, your teenage years, or?
I grew up, I was born in St. Louis, and I stayed there till I was about 14, 15. I bounced back and forth for a few years from St. Louis to Cali.
What year was this?
That would have been like 82, 83 when I first came to Cali. Then I didn't start living here until like 84, 85.
82, 83 was such a different time than what it is today.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say the difference between, St. Louis and LA at the moment was? Like, how did the difference in the shit feel?
For me, the first thing I noticed is all the different cultures.
Ooh.
It's black and white in St. Louis. Now it's not, but when I grew up, it was, the only thing I might have seen was a few Cambodians and, a real Indian. There was real Indians in my school, like long black hair, ponytail type thing. But most of the kids were black or white.
Oh, wow. So it was different.
Yeah, you come in here and you're seeing different languages on signs and stuff like that. You're like, whoa, can't even read that. But yeah.
As a young Ern, do you think that was kind of like a difficult shift to kind of get used to so much culture when you just come from?
No, it was intriguing. You know what I mean? Because even like in St. Louis, even though there weren't many other cultures, they still were there. And you just would be, instead of being a bunch like there are here, it would be one or two. And you just meet that one or two.
Mm-hmm.
And you could kind of like become friends or whatnot. So yeah, I had friends that were from other cultures, but it just wasn't an abundance. And
Okay.
like you could get Mexican food, but it wasn't going to be a Mexican dude cooking it.
Kind of like some chipotle type stuff. It's sort of there, but not all the
Taco
way. To your early, knowledge, your early memories, as far as starting to become a creative guy, did that start early on, or was that later on in your teen years?
Oh no, man! My mom and my dad are artists. My dad's whole family are really, really talented with their hands. And when you say an artist, that doesn't mean that they have to paint. That means you can make things with your hands. And so, yeah, these hands were here before me. You know what I'm saying? That's how I look at it. Both my parents were left-handed, but my dad could do both. He could draw with both hands. So as a young kid, I was just drawing. I always knew I was going to be able to create with my hands. Like, my dad was really good with wood. He made stuff, and I was always there handing him a tool or putting something in place. So I was really right there all the time with my dad making stuff. And then his dad was the same with him.
Okay.
And then my mom, she was very musical. Even though she could draw, she sang. And that's what brought us to California, because she was looking into her singing career. She had an album out at the time we moved here. So she did a lot of performances on Hollywood. And that's how I got a chance to really see the limelight with my mom, because she was out performing. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, graffiti was just something that I fell into, but I was always drawing. I got articles from junior high school with it talking about me being a young artist and stuff like that.
Awesome. When you look back into like your family being so rooted into being artistic,
Mm-hmm.
How does that make you feel knowing that it runs deep in the roots?
A challenge.
Why
That's
a
what it is.
challenge?
A challenge, a goal, you know. Growing up, I would always send my dad and my mom, "Hey, look at this," just
Mm.
to impress them because knowing that they were creative and that they could do it, just, since they didn't seek it or continue with it, I felt like they could live through me and my accomplishments were their accomplishments. So I would just share, you know what I mean? And that was my way of giving back. Like, hey, look what I did or look what I'm doing. My mom is my hardest critic sometimes. She will look at something and give me the truth.
So by the time it came to getting criticized by another artist, it was kind of like you were already ready because you were already molded.
Yeah, yeah. And then even in high school, a lot of the classes they had critiquing moments. So you kind of have that goes with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not there to hurt your feelings. It's there to sharpen. You know, they're the sharpener. You're the tool.
Going from, being watching your parents and seeing them being artistic, how does it go from that to like now maybe I want to pick up like a pencil and start sketching a cartoon or a comic? How did that go about for you?
My first memory is my dad bought a bunch of color pencils, and this was he got his first house. And when we went to go look at the house, the one of the rooms already had like artwork on the walls. And he was like, "Oh, you want to leave that like that? It'll be your room." So I was like, "Yeah." And then the first couple days, I remember him coming home with a big blackboard, bunch of colored pencils, and he started drawing Spider Man. And it just amazed me that he could just look at it and draw it,
Yeah.
and with the way the anatomy, the muscles, and all of that. And I just knew I was just like, "Wow, that I could do that." You know what I mean? Just seeing that he went from, learning, and it was good. It was very sharp by the time I got old enough. I would say I was like 10 or 12. And yeah, he was very sharp. And then also he had a sculpture that he did that sat in the house. It was a sculpture of himself that he had a set of headphones. It was like his headphone holder.
Okay.
And that was something growing up that was always like, wow. You know what I mean?
Like my dad did that.
Yeah, and I always looked at it like that's very impressive. And knowing that art has many different levels and genres and angles, and you could do anything and say you're an artist. It's not just painting. You know what I mean? So yeah, that was one of my very impressive moments that still to this day sticks in my head as I want to be like that.
And to your knowledge, do you remember what part of LA you landed in when you came from St. Louis at 14?
Uh, when I came the very first time to California, we were in Baldwin Hills area, and my mom was working at a record store, and I would attend the Crenshaw YMCA.
Okay.
I played for the Crenshaw Celtics. Still got my jersey. Yeah, yeah.
You're coming into LA and you're just dealing with the shift point of coming from St. Louis, your parents being a big inspiration to you. At what point do you kind of start opening up your eye to what's around you as far as surroundings like the neighborhood or a certain spot there that kind of influence you to start developing your artistic style?
Um, well, I think I think Hollywood was like the first thing that just like blew my mind, seeing the graffiti and the breakdancing was like that's what I sought after. Like seeing it on TV was like, oh man, we're going to California. That's what I want to see. That was what the young kids were doing. So I naturally wanted to be some sort of way involved in it. But it didn't really settle in until I enrolled in school. Like it was still just like me being a spectator.
Okay.
But I mean, I always was just drawing, so I didn't need influence to draw. Like I would look at a TV guide and see a letter style or a character or an ad, and that was just enough to spark that I knew I wanted to be on another level and I had to be able to do these things that I saw that were being printed. You know,
Gotcha.
if you saw the newspaper, it had the Looney Tunes and all this cartoons and stuff in there. So you knew if you were going to be in some sort of art level, that was what was there. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
ads. But then when it was the street level, it was on the wall. But that
Gotcha.
was hip hop. So like I was bouncing back and forth, like from being wanting to be just a professional artist to learning about the street art.
And that's the beauty of it, in my opinion, how this is pre-internet. So you had to use articles. You had to see what was available to see like, oh, that looks pretty cool. Maybe I could do it in my style. It
Yeah.
wasn't like,
Or just learn how to do that style. Like I learned a lot of fonts because of TV Guide, newspaper, Yellow Pages.
yeah,
Those were the fonts. So a company hired an artist to do the graphic design. They basically would either draw it and turn it into vector, or they would get a font that was already there and maybe overlap it or reposition it to
yeah.
make it look like a logo. But of course, as an artist, you could see through a lot of that. The average eye couldn't tell.
You start looking at proportions, angles, and you're like, oh, maybe I could twist it like this and make it mine.
Yeah, and just make it my name. Look at that font. You could look at the MASH letters and say, oh, I'm going to make it say earn. And then you got to try to figure out how those letters would look because they were stencil style letters.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the beginning, I think, of just being a young artist. And there, like you said, no computer. So ads were the internet. Like the newspaper was the internet. The TV Guide was the internet.
Gotcha.
You know, comic books. That if you were a kid that didn't collect comic books, that you missed a lot.
It's like you guys are collecting Pokemon cards now. We were collecting comic
I
books.
had baseball cards. That was the first card. I collected baseball cards. You get the gum. I have a mouthful of gum.
I know you mentioned that you were witnessing hip hop commercials on TV, right? Like breaking.
Very minimal. Very minimal. When I came to Cali, hip hop was on K-Day in the evening,
Okay.
not in the day. And you would see, so there was a show called The Pilot, and that was the closest to what was on TV. And it would rerun. You would see it in the TV Guide, of course. You see it in TV Guide and put your VCR on that date and time, and hopefully you could catch it and record it.
Oh, so you had to be there at the exact same time as they were going live?
Or you could put your VCR on pre-settings to
Yeah.
know that this channel, this time, record.
Oh,
And
wow.
then that, like if you had to go to bed, you know what I mean? Because
you-
we had bedtime.
So if you missed it, you missed it. No.
Unless you recorded it.
Whoa.
So that's how hip hop grew, because people were recording. We weren't just watching it and being like, I saw.
Yeah.
Nah, you recorded and all your homies come over and watch it again and watch it over and over. Pilot was that was like the first thing I remember seeing as far as hip hop on TV other than Soul Train.
How was that though? Watching something that's new coming in, because for us
It was
now-
old already.
Oh, it was already old.
Yeah, so you had heard about it, but you just missed it.
Oh,
So somebody
okay.
would tell you, and then you look through the TV Guide every week to try to find this show called Pilot, and
Yeah.
you probably would think would have been on PBS, because PBS was more like the lower budget. Like Sesame Street was very low budget,
Okay.
but that was probably still the closest to hip hop, because they're making voices, and you
Yeah.
know, they did introduce a little bit of rap, and they had the rhymes, and so it was a little mixture in there, but PBS was like where hip hop was.
This show Pilot, do you remember what artists were on there? Like rapping?
Yeah, there was Ozone was the breaker that came to Radiotron. Wildcat, crazy wild style, New York accent, all of that. Braggadocious, very flamboyant. He was a B-boy, but the Pilot was about a girl
Oh,
that
okay.
everybody thought was a guy, because she was breaking and killing everybody, but they didn't know she was a chick.
And this whole time they're thinking they're a guy.
She had a little helmet. They couldn't tell, and she was b-boying, b-girling, and just slaying them.
Do you remember what kind of music they were playing on the radio station? You said it was only on the evenings.
K-Day was playing straight up hip hop, you know. Uncle Jam's Army was playing. Dr. Dre was playing. He was the
Okay.
DJ. So everybody forgets the reason why Dr. Dre is so famous, because when he got on the mix tables, when he did his tables,
Yeah.
when he was doing his thing, you might hear his name for a full 2 minutes, Dr. Dre. And that's all you would hear, Dr. Dre. Just over and over and over. That was the lyrics, Dr. Dre. So before NWA, you already heard all these DJs' names. They were mixing, you know. Sugar Hill Gang, Uncle Jam's Army was the one DJ group that put in all of the. They'd play the mixes from New York, you know what I mean. Kumo D, Run DMC, and when LL came out, that was like the young rapper. It was like, oh, new, because rappers were older.
Okay.
They didn't look young. They looked like grown men.
But here comes a new flavor.
A youngster. He looked like he was a teenager. He could move around, and them dudes was like straight stiff. They didn't do all of that. LL was like, you know,
with
he
the
looked
big old
more
gazelle
of a
glasses
style.
and stuff.
Yeah, and then like what? Eric B and Rakim. Eric B didn't move around.
Gotcha.
Just smooth operator. What was his other homie's name? I can't think of his name right now.
For me, it's crazy to imagine there was a point that was being like the thing on the radio, because you listen to us on the radio now, and it's a whole different style, you know?
Well, it's kind of weird. I think we weren't aware of the control back then.
Mm.
Now we could see the control, because we'll straight say that's whack, but it's all over the radio. But it's not whack to that audience. It's whack to the originators, to the old school, to where it came from.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? But then if you compare when hip hop made its peak to back in the day could sound whack. You know, they had Bobby Jimmy and the Critters. You know
Gotcha.
that?
Yeah.
They had what was his name? The Duke, Rapping Duke. Type that in. Y'all go and type in Rapping Duke, and then you'll hear some real old, slow, funky style character. He was a character.
And this listening to this music at the moment, right? The hip hop. Did that lead you to start pop locking?
I was pop locking, definitely.
Is that where that comes from listening to the music, or is there another influence there?
Soul Train. Watching Soul Train, either you gonna dance or you gonna boogie. I mean,
Gotcha.
know, so we were hip hop, all the elements. If you were into hip hop, you wanted to do all of them. I might have said a rhyme or two, but I didn't. My mom had music equipment, 808, all that, piano, all of that was at the house, but I just didn't get into it. But I grew up around rappers. So UCA wasn't just graffiti artists.
Yeah.
I always say this, and maybe you heard it before. Freestyle Fellowship, a lot of them guys came from UCA. So when we were running the streets with the radio and we stopped and hung out on the bus stop, Micah 9 and AC Alone, they was rapping with us. They would sit there and bust a rhyme. You know what I mean?
At the bus stop?
Yeah, at the bus stop.
And it's like with the whole boombox and everything.
Yeah, that's how it was. We were the whole show. It was all, we have a breaker or two with us.
Yeah.
I was popping, they was rapping. A couple of us was scribbling, you know? So it was a whole thing. It wasn't just graffiti. It was everything. Like your crew was a crew. It didn't just mean just artists, even though we were called undercover artists, but it was art form, all of the levels, everything.
Is popping something that you pursued to like a higher level from just a hobby?
No, I did it for fun. I met a few guys in the early 90s that were real serious dancers when it started turning into like a house thing. And, you know, I hung out with them. My legs weren't as good anymore, but I did try to go hang out with them. And I made it to the point where they were actually getting ready to go and be on Soul Train. And I didn't even go. I just was like, that's dope. You know what I mean? They made it. It was their dream. They were really dope at it. I didn't grow up with these guys. I met these guys in Northridge. By this time, it was like 89, 90. We had graduated high school, had jobs. I was working at Aaron Brothers.
Okay.
And I felt like it was cool, but I didn't pursue it. It wasn't something that I was in love with. I I my love was very, very focused on graffiti by that time. Like I knew I didn't want to get arrested for graffiti. So, and then, you got a job, so you don't want to lose your job. So I started focusing on how to combine graffiti and airbrush. So that was the turning point for me, was getting out of high school. I got popped a couple times and then I was like, that's not for me. I'm not going to be behind bars.
For what I like to do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so graffiti, if you consider yourself a graffiti artist, and this goes for now and back then, my belief is you start out on one level, but you want to end up on a higher level. So if you're going to get a job paid to do a gig, right after that gig, are you going to go out and do something illegal and risk getting arrested? Or are you just going to go home and continue sharpening your skills or even go seek another job? So that was how I looked at it. I didn't want to take the risk of not having my future opportunities by being locked up. And I was witnessing it. I mean, we hit up and run, somebody gets caught. So that dude, he got whatever they did, he got it. And now he's telling us, oh, this is what happened. This is what they're going to do. And then you're going to have to do this probation, or you're going to have to do community service. And this is when it was small, but then it grew. I mean, graffiti artists changed the game on all kind of levels. For one example, we used to make bus passes.
Like make homemade bus passes to get on the bus?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we used to take the dollars and rip them in half. So the machine wasn't digital. You could just put it in there and it looked like a full dollar. You could walk to the bus stop and flash it real quick and look like a real bus pass. That's why the bus passes are the way they are now.
Gotcha.
We changed everything. Like graffiti artists were on so many different levels of coming up and getting away with things. It changed the game.
I wanted to take a small rewind on this topic. Graffiti itself, how did that stumble into your life early on?
Seeing it on Hollywood Boulevard. My mom would take me up there. And not only would I see the graffiti, I would see the B-boys at the Man's Chinese. And you see the mini trucks riding down the street with a few lowriders, with the bed dancing. And so what I saw was the lowriders had graffiti on them.
Gotcha.
The windows look like graffiti to me because it's just a font with an outline. That's graffiti to me. How I grew up, a font is a way of the letters to be special. So the graffiti artist twists and turns it to make it where it's difficult, where your eyes gotta move around to understand it. So me seeing the mini trucks and all of that, it was all combined to me. I was like, this is everything together. Lowriding and hip hop were together to me because I knew that I was the artist. So that I could either go and do it on the wall, or I could do it on a shirt, pair of shoes, or even your car. But it was levels. I had to reach that level because they weren't just going to let you just write on their car.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you had to show and prove. It was all about showing and proving. So when I first saw it, that was Hollywood Boulevard was my first. But then by the time that movie Breaking came out, I was like already going to the Radiotron, but we just had, it was like an after school thing where we would go after school and hang out, and the graffiti artists would meet up and we would just have black book sessions. And that's how I started absorbing the whole graffiti thing, with other writers. You know what I mean?
Did you have an influence as far as a writer came about that kind of influenced you to not be like them, but kind of influence your style early on?
Yeah, of course. So before NWA, my name was Easy E, and I was part of another. It was two of us. It was a guy named Easy. He introduced me to the whole game. He came from a gang, but he was moved to my area so that he could get out of the gang. So, his parents were living separate. So he moved to his dad's area, and his dad happened to live where I was, and we met each other in 7th grade. Rest in peace, Easy.
Rest in peace.
he brought it all to me. He showed me everything. He had letter styles. Matter of fact, just to show you, a lot of people be like, "Oh yeah, I used to do graffiti back in the day."
Yeah.
I used to do graffiti back in the day, but this right here is proof. This book is from 1986. I just got it maybe 3 or 4, maybe 2 months ago. I got it like 2 months ago from Easy's dad. His dad had this book. We ran into each other right before a graffiti event. And yeah, the letters are whack, but yeah, it says 1986 on a bunch of these pages. But this is my proof. Published right here. Shows you that I was doing it back then, not talking about it and saying, "Oh, I had a book." But we used to let people borrow our books, and you might not ever get them back. And that, man, used to irk me.
That
And
happened to me hundreds of times in high
yeah,
school.
and so now you got to be very serious about who you let use your book and hold on to your book because of the dilemma that comes with it. Luckily, his dad didn't say, "Oh, this is a bunch of scribble," and throw it in the trash. He kept it.
You saved it.
And he just happened to run into me. It was the craziest thing how it happened because I was going to paint an event with Create over it. They call it Dead Man's Alley.
Okay.
And it's been going on for about 8 to 10 years now, once every summer. I just happen to park my car and I get out the car and there's this dude walking by and I just say, "What's up?" Just respect. I see an old brother. I say, "What's up?" to him. He says, "What's up?" As our backs are to each other, I hear Earn. I turn around and it's the dude and he's like, "Yeah, it's me." But he looks different, of course.
Yeah.
But he recognizes me because we follow each other on Facebook. And I've told him where I was going and he was like, "Yeah." It's crazy because it was around the corner from where me and Easy used to hang out at his grandmother's house, and his dad still lives there. And it just never dawned on me to even drive by there and even stop by the house and knock on the door. But I was right there around the corner at the spot, and he walks up to me and he's like, "I got something for you." He comes by 2 hours or 3 hours later, and he has that book. Man, it just was like, oh, this just made my collection right here. This is it. You know what I'm saying? Like, to the end right here. This is from the beginning to, and then the book underneath is my newest book. Got maybe 2022. I might do a scribble or two once in a while, but from these 2 books right here is from beginning to end. And I know a lot of us don't have that. So if you have a black book that you started, keep it. If you let somebody write in it, be right there with them.
Make sure you get it back.
Go to their house or they come to your house, have a black book session.
It becomes your archives. Like you get to see how you developed over the years.
Mm-hmm. It's important to be able to look back. And I could even look in here, and to this day, I could take one of these pieces and rock it and just add a little more flavor to it.
Gotcha. At what point do you go from black book sessions, watching it around to like now I'm gonna develop a name and I'm gonna go out and do it on my own style?
In high school, all the graffiti artists were taking drafting classes. We all were trying to be like graphic designers or architects or whatnot. And a teacher, Mr. Kavanaugh, I went to Belmont High. I graduated 89. And Mr. Kavanaugh, he noticed that there was a lot of graffiti artists in his classes.
Okay.
And so he started telling us, "Hey, I bought an airbrush for my sons for Boy Scout to do the little soapbox car, and he doesn't even use it anymore. I'm going to bring it to school." But since he wasn't an art teacher, he couldn't teach it. So he gave us the opportunity to come during lunchtime and recess to practice airbrushing in his class. Before that, most of the graffiti artists were designing book covers. So you get your book for your class, and in order to not be fined for the damage, you had to put a book cover on it, which would be a brown paper bag, and you would write math book on it. But if you wanted it to stand out, you would hand that to a graffiti artist, and then now your math books looks funky, fresh.
Gotcha.
So all of us, that's what we were doing. And so that's how you knew who were the graffiti artists by, "Oh, who did your book?" Then they tell you, and then you're like, "Oh, I gotta get that guy to do my science book." And so Mr. Kavanaugh brought airbrush, and I was like, "Oh, I gotta learn this." And so we started, It went from doing the book covers to doing the t-shirts and the pants and the hats. So now you could go to school and do a shirt during lunchtime and make a little couple dollars.
Gotcha.
That's when I realized there's money in it.
Mhm.
And then we all knew you could go to Six Flags and get an airbrush t-shirt.
But ain't nobody got.
We all knew that.
I'm
So
gonna go over
it was like, and those guys, you go over there, them dudes was looking with gray hair already. You know what I mean? A lot of them dudes was old at the fairs and all of that. So it was hard to relate, like talk and have a conversation, because they're seeing you as a kid, and we were kids, but they are grown men already doing it. But they did not do graffiti. They didn't have no hip hop flavor. They were doing blocks, bubble, script, and print.
Traditional.
Basic.
Going to Belmont High, did you were able to go to Belmont Tunnel?
Of course. I was one of the pioneers of graph in Belmont Tunnel. Man, don't fake the funk. I was at the Belmont Tunnel. When I first painted at the Belmont Tunnel, the walls didn't have paint all the way to the top. It was still straight cement. I looked and looked and looked a couple days ago for the picture to send to you, but the oldest one I could find was those silver pieces that I sent. And you could still see the wall was bare. Like, it was just tags across the top. And it's funny because I always would tell people, man, it seemed like them walls shrunk. And then some people be like, well, you got taller. But I think the movies, when they used to come down there and do movies, they would bring and put dirt in there. And it just made the walls shorter. Like that wall right there, I might have put another piece with that same wall that I sent you, but you could almost tell that it was a little shorter because they started like doing new pavement, putting more and more dirt, and it just made the wall shrink. But if you see this piece right here, you can see at the very, very top, there's no paint. That means I was part of the beginning of Belmont Tunnel. That's proof right there in your face.
How was that? How was that? Like, someone for me, Belmont Tunnel was right before my time. Walking in there, how was the vibe there?
It was dangerous. That when I did my first piece, we were walking out. We went at night.
Mhm.
We didn't want to get caught. We didn't know that you could. It was kind of one of them things where you just didn't know. We found the spot. We were still in junior high. We took the bus. We get over there. And I don't even know how Easy found out about it. I want to say it was somebody at the at the Radiotron that mentioned it. And we get over there, and when we finish, we're leaving. And we brought somebody with us that was much older and bigger for protection. So it'll be 3 of us in case something pop off. And as we were leaving, there was a house across the street. I found out later on it was Rick Crime, K2S. He lived across the street from the street you had to go up. There was houses on both sides to get out. And we're coming up the hill, and all of a sudden we're getting bombed with oranges.
With oranges?
They were throwing oranges. There had to be about 15 of them. And they just started bombing us with oranges. And we just ran. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And that was like a shock. Like, what the fuck? But it was at the same time, it was funny because they didn't have guns or nothing. And they didn't even come out and chase us or nothing. They just threw oranges at us. And we were like, dang, is it cool to go back? But then, later on, we all ended up meeting them guys.
But you seen them throwing the oranges?
Yeah, we were feeling them throwing the oranges. They were hitting us. There wasn't no way you wasn't going to get hit because it was too many coming. It was almost like they probably could see us down there painting. And they were like, we're going to get them when they come back. We're going to get them. And then they got us. They just bombed us with oranges. But it was fun for them. They didn't turn it into violence. But over the years, I heard some dangerous stories. But see, the thing was for me, I always say this to people. I'm not trying to offend anybody. But in high school, I was taller than everybody.
Yeah.
So that meant nobody was just going to run up on you by themselves because they're looking up at me.
Gotcha.
And Easy was taller than me, and his cousin was taller than him. So 3 big dudes. That's why they threw oranges. I know, but it is what it is. They still could have came out. It was a bunch of them. It was more of them than it was of us. and they made fun of it. It was fun for them, and that's what was cool. But over the years, some violence happened to some guys that came down there that just didn't know what was up. We were growing up in the area, so they was gonna see us eventually during the daytime.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it we became friends. And I learned that they were graffiti artists slash gangbangers. At the time, they were part of something that was not named. They named it tag banging. So you had dudes that were part of a gang area, but they were artists, and it went together. You just didn't say you were from the gang,
Gotcha.
and so that kind of thing I just stayed away from. I just tried to avoid it as much as possible. When we found out who they were, it wasn't like, oh, F you, it wasn't even about that. It was more like, oh, that was funny. You guys got us. And then we just laughed about it and things went on. But like I said, it was a dangerous spot. Belmont Tunnel was surrounded by at least 3 gangs, and those gangs are still there to this day. You know what I mean? They got just a whole new generation. Them things don't die. They multiply.
But it was never a situation where like the gang members would come in there and kind of.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember we had a paint off where it was just graffiti artists everywhere in the tunnel. You got cans coming in, and then what you gonna do if you are the stick up kid? You're gonna look for a victim. And some of these dudes, so like I said, we were on foot. Now, if you on foot, and those dudes that threw oranges was on foot too. Now, if you're in your neighborhood and you're on foot, and you see some dudes driving in and getting out the car with cans, they not from around here. We getting them. That's lunch meat.
Oh,
You gotta chuck up some cans, or we taking all of them.
gotcha.
And they would come down, oh no, them dudes took our black. Yeah, because you're not from around here. You guys looking like okie doke, big money, driving cars, talking about you a graffiti artist. Nah, we were from the gutter. We was kids that just didn't have the opportunity that some of them dudes did have, and they found out about the tunnel, and that was the thing that it kind of made me see that it was 2 different graffiti artists. It was the graffiti artist that had parents with money that was sponsoring it. Then you had the graffiti artist that was really on the grind. That's where I was. I was on the grind. My mom didn't buy me no spray paint.
You gotta go get it.
They called it racking.
And racking, can you share a little bit of those encounters?
It was fun. We used to get the Adidas outfits and have the little elastic at the bottom. Just make sure they're real tight. And you just throw a bunch of cans in your pants and walk out all like big old puffed up dude. But yeah, I mean, it was an age you couldn't buy spray paint. You had to be like 18 because graffiti had already changed that. Like that was already the thing. Like you had to have ID.
And this was before they were all covered up behind the counter. They were just
they were just open cases.
Accessible.
Graffiti artists changed the game. Y'all, man, graffiti artists did a lot to what's going on today. They didn't label it because of graffiti artists, but a graffiti artist knows why they were locked up.
Was there a certain thing that will kind of burn you out when you were racking that kind of knew like, oh, this guy's here for spray paint? That they already have kind of like an identity in their mind thinking that this guy's here for that?
Man, I hate to be racial, but I'm black.
Yeah.
When I walk in the store, I'm already being looked at. I used to go hang out with some of the dudes that weren't black. And we would go in and I would be the decoy. I get 2 cans, they get 20 cans.
Gotcha.
Because guess who got chased out?
Me. Over race.
Just because I look like I was the part. Like, I mean, I don't like to say it's because of race, but it is.
Yeah.
They see the black dude and they just think, oh, he's in here to do something. Let's send somebody down aisle 9. See what he does.
And I think that's one of the beauties of graffiti, right? Because you're not being judged on your race or anything like that. It's based on your style and how you can get down with the can.
Yes and no. Yes and no. I still feel sometimes I feel like, oh, it's because they can't relate to me or they think I'm about this or they think that. It's some people do judge you by what they see. You know what I'm saying? My arms are written on, you know what I mean? Um, I don't look like I have a job. I got big old long beard. So it definitely has a factor. Um, but I don't care. This is who I am. You know what I'm saying? And you could be who you are and I could be who I am. If you don't like me because I'm black, as long as you can say that, I'm cool. But if you're going to hide the fact that you don't like me because I'm black, that's where I have a problem. So I don't use it as saying, oh, well, he did this because he ain't black. And no, I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that it's a different access. So meaning like I could go put on all black, get my hoodie right now. I'm 54. I
Yeah.
could go put on a hoodie, put on and tear my neighborhood up. But I'm not going to get far because it's a big black dude walking down the street.
Gotcha.
They're going to see me. You know what I'm saying? Now, if I could change my appearance a little bit by driving around and waiting until there's nothing going on, then yeah, I probably could get away with it a lot easier. But there are kids that are straight up doing it right during broad daylight and they got on fluorescent vests and nobody's saying anything to them and they're walking around with the can in their hand. You know what I'm saying? But just imagine me walking down the street with a can in my hand. A police officer is going to pull up and say something
Based on a stereotype.
based on how I look.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. I'm not mad at it. You know what I'm saying? We've done it. Shoot, we got away with a lot of stuff too. Like just because I'm saying that I can't do it don't mean we're not doing it. You know what I'm saying? There's brothers out there that have gotten up. Like I was saying before, Maniac. Maniac used to kill it everywhere. Way before Chaka. Maniac, Triax. Triax, I think, was like Filipino or something. But yeah, there was a point in time when we could get away with it and it didn't matter. But then as they caught on, meaning the law, they had to stereotype it in some sort of way. Now I would say the stereotype is definitely a black hoodie. You know what I mean? My kids wear hoodies all the time. And that all started from Trayvon. Trayvon got killed. And both my kids, they will not take off their hoods. Like my son works with his hood on and he gets away with it. Like it's just part of his look. But it's because that's something that he's expressing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That hood means something. You know what I mean? Because the kid got killed by wearing it because of how he looked, but he wasn't doing nothing. So, it can go both ways. You could either get away or you might not get away.
It's
And
just
I'm not taking the risk.
some people's way of thinking. I don't know. Sometimes it's not normal, you know?
I mean, it is normal. You should be aware of your surroundings. But like for me, just when I was standing out front waiting for you, it don't matter what color you are. If you walking towards me with looking like you ready to do something, I'm gonna keep my eye on you until you get past me because of how I grew up. Like I'm not gonna be the okey doke. I'm gonna be aware of what's going on and I'm gonna be ready for it. I'm not gonna be sleeping
Or get caught
because
lacking.
yeah, because of the fact of what I'm always around. You know what I mean? You can't just be like everybody's cool because not everybody is cool.
I wanted to dive into a little bit more on Belmont Tunnel. When you were walking in there, I know you mentioned that it was still like fresh paint, just some tags.
Mm-hmm.
Was there anybody that you were already seeing up in there, like as far as like
Yeah.
bombs and pieces?
Shandu had a piece in there. Crime had a piece. Sign and Geo, they passed away. Rest in peace. They
Rest in
passed in the 80s. Them dudes they passed away. They were like, that was like a shock, like, to have a friend get killed. And they were really talented, but a lot of the dudes that literally grew up in that area, they had pieces in the tunnel. And that's how we knew you could go and do something, some sort of art form in there. There were gang writings and you did have to worry about the gangs crossing it out. So it was really like a thing. Don't leave any cans, try to spray it all out because they're going to pick it up and do something. And it was a thing. Like if somebody crossed you out, it meant more than just being crossed out. Like You
Really?
had to be ready because that person was really looking for you. You
Mm.
know, crossing out was a whole nother level back then. Like cross out meant cross out. Like you might have to change your name.
You know, gang style graffiti being so impactful in those years, that impact your style at all?
Um, I might have dibble dabbled in a little bit of graffiti type gang writing, only because it did look cool, you know, and I did, you know, once I started airbrushing, I realized I did have to be able to do it because some of the gangs would buy airbrush shirts. So I'm versatile when it comes to fonts.
Yeah.
I can do gang writing. I know the whole Old English alphabet. I could do it without looking at a piece of paper. Um, and I can do various styles. If you want to say the brothers style or the Mexican style, whatever you want to call it. I'm very versatile when it comes to letters. Um, Only because my love for it. Before graffiti, like I said, I was looking in newspapers and things like that. So letters were my thing because I knew even if I wanted to be a graphic designer, I still needed to know how the structure of the letters worked. So I needed to know how to draw it as opposed to typing it.
Gotcha. When Subway Art came in, a book that was focused on the styles that you were really focused on, how
Mhm.
was that for you taking that in?
It was dope. I wanted to meet the guys. I wanted to, you know, pick their brain. Um, I started trying to figure out a name that was cool. I think Scheme was the one that I thought like, oh, maybe I could try to like flip that. And first I started copying how he did his letters, and then I started trying to figure out how I could change it into a name that was similar. But then once I started realizing about the whole biting and, you know, not having the same name as somebody, and I did have trouble writing Earn. Like after I dropped Easy and I became Earn because it was Easy E, the E was for Earn. Everybody was calling me Earn. When NWA came out, I knew I just was like, I got to change it. So I just picked up the Earn. Then KRS, he put the one, and I was like, I'm gonna do that. I just added the one, and then that's when I realized like I didn't need to copy. It was really about trying to create with my own originality. But it was definitely the big influence. Um, Looking at the colors and how they blended them, the 3D, you know. We weren't even doing trains though. Like we was doing strictly walls and buses. And you could barely get anything on a bus, like a tag was about the most. Um, Trains didn't really come into play. I think a lot of the graph artists in Cali didn't get into that until maybe the early 90s, late 80s, but I wasn't messing around with it. We in St. Louis, the hobos hung out in the train yards. We didn't want to be caught up by a hobo.
And does Earn come from an idea or does something trigger
No,
that?
my name is Ernest.
Oh, that's where Earn comes from.
So I didn't want to be called Ernie.
Okay.
And Ernie was a New York writer. That's dope. He was pretty much an innovator. I always say he's an innovator of that 3D look. Um, I remember when he did the Method Man album, everybody thought I did it
Oh, wow.
because it was signed Ernie. They might have mistaken the I for a one.
Oh, I
But
see.
I mean, he was dope. I never really heard of him hating on me, so I didn't hate on him. And I didn't have a lot of New York connections, so I didn't really know what they were saying over there. I just knew I was holding it down here. And it's funny, on my way here today, when I got off the 405, I saw Earn Z with a Z on the end. So I see you out there, little man, but I'm the OG. Respect it.
Gotcha. Early on, were you able to encounter any writer from New York?
Yeah, they would come out. You know what I mean? The Belmont Tunnel was where it was at. But then, so we called us the east side of the graffiti. But then there was like the Pan Pacific, and then they had train yards, like where the tunnels and stuff were, where you could hit them up. But that was on the west side of LA. But the Belmont Tunnel had already been marked as a place to go to. So yeah, I ran into plenty of New York writers. I was just never really trying to be all buddy buddy, so I didn't get to know them like that. I would just meet them, hey, shake their hand, And that was pretty much it. Like no jocking, you know what I'm saying?
Do you remember some of the names of those early New York writers that were at Belmont Tunnel?
Nah, I can't say that I can remember, man. That's one thing. Some of the names I forgot. There was this one dude that used to hit up real crazy, but I don't know if he was from New York. His name was Jack Frost, and he used to do these crazy, super large pieces that just when he painted, you had to be prepared to go over him because it was so big.
Okay.
And that's the one that stuck in my head. I can't say he was from New York, but as far as me saying to giving anybody props from back then that wasn't from Cali, him, and then we all know him now as Charlie Tuna. He was definitely an innovator back then that wasn't from Cali, just like me. He's from Chicago. He wrote Chicago 1000. And that was another writer, and he still gets down. Y'all know him from Jurassic 5. He gets down. He's still spray painting.
Shout out to both of them guys.
Yeah. And I just, you know what? I don't think it was like a big thing. Like I felt like I was striving I wanted to be the one that everybody wanted to meet. So trying to meet another writer from New York wasn't really my thing. Like I gave props to New York. When I did go there, I hung out with Tat's crew. I hung out with Ivory. But other than that, I didn't really meet no other artists. Like, and they didn't embrace me and show me a wall or nothing like that. I had to go do my own thing and find my own spot. But I felt like that's part of the game. You really got to build on your own level and start out on your own.
I agree. You know, your crew itself, I know you mentioned to me that it was made here in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
Are you kind of like molded the crew like to bring it up, or did you just kind of join it early on?
I was part of the beginning. Chase started it, like I would say 82, 83, and it was just him. Then he recruited people like I said, AC Alone, Micah 9. He had another brother named Minus, rest in peace. Another brother named Skill, not UTI. And they did meet each other, but our Skill had one L, and that was the difference. We agreed that they would be Skill and he'd have two, and our dude would have one. And they were in UCA before me, and they grew up in the Baldwin Hills area. But me being in the Rampart area, I would always frequent the Radiotron. And Minus was known for racking. He would come to the Radiotron and sell his stuff. He had black books for sale. He had markers, cans, you name it, he had it. He was a walking graffiti supply. And I met Chase up there. And he was drawn to us, me and Easy, pretty much the only brothers in that area. You know what I mean? And Easy had skills, you know what I mean? He could bust a tag of anybody's name. And that's how we ended up joining. They made us go through the range. You had to go get up, get a little fame, get your name known, get out of your city. That was kind of what we had to do. And once I got known a little bit and met more writers and my name was kind of like making a little noise, I became part of UCA in like 85.
What is the original meaning for UCA? 'Cause I know there's a lot of meanings, but what is the original meaning?
It will always be undercover artists.
Undercover artist.
And that was because we weren't walking around advertising it. So we could be around other artists and they wouldn't know. You know what I mean? So that was really our get down, was to be undercover.
Was there any early battles with UCA against anybody else? Like crew versus crew?
They wasn't trying to step to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you know what? I think with us, we just really weren't trying to start no beef. I would definitely say we weren't the top tier of artists. I think the battles might have been just about getting more fame.
Okay.
And a lot of them dudes that were battling at the time were new. They knew us. They were trying to impress us. So, and then some of them either that were going to be part of UCA and said, nah, we're going to start our own thing. But I mean, we were already on the level of being known, so we didn't have nothing to prove. But then at the same time, like I said, nobody stepped to us. Nobody was trying to like no static. Wasn't no static with UCA ever until WCA started trying to turn our U's into W's. But that got squashed so quick. I think it might have been because it might have been more on the violent side than anything because of how we carried ourselves. Like I said, a cross out was major. So we didn't take it like, oh, they want to battle. We were like, oh, F them. Like somebody gonna get hurt.
Yeah.
They were a way bigger crew and they started collecting and getting bigger and bigger. But like I said, it didn't turn into no real beef. Like it just turned into like, oh, okay, it's cool. You know?
You coming from the generation where it was like early on Los Angeles graffiti, your personal perspective, do you feel like individuals should just belong to one crew, or are you open to the idea of being part of multiple crews?
Hmm. I'm from one crew. But there was a point in time when I had my airbrush shop. We had a little area where we sold the graffiti supplies. I teamed up with my boy Just from NASA. And back in the day, Prince had that song 1999. And it didn't come out in 1999. It came out like in 87, 85. And it was a big thing, like 1999? What? That's crazy. So back then, they used to put a K behind their crew, meaning killer or king. And I came up with an idea to get new graffiti artists, but not induct them into our old crews. So me and Just teamed up. We took his graph supply name, Masterpiece, and then I came up with this 2K thing. Because of the whole K, I was like, oh, we could be the whole beginning of changing the name of K. Instead of Killer or King, it's 2000. So we ran it for about 10 years, Masterpiece 2000. But now to this day, a few of them have become NASA, a few of them have become UCA, and a couple of them have sprinkled out into some other crews. All of them were dope. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were young, very dope. Like Caesar, Dammit, Bear, Mo. There was a dude named B2. He was killing the trains.
Shout out to all of them guys.
Two-neck.
Got one more question for you, brother, before we get on out of here. I know you mentioned that early on in high school, a teacher kind of was allowing you to airbrush. But at what point do you take your airbrush career from just a hobby to the next level?
Out of high school, first I was teaching airbrush classes at Aaron Brothers. That's how I got hired on because I had airbrush knowledge. And then by like 1990 or 91, I airbrushed at Universal Studios. And I realized the dude that owned it didn't know how to airbrush. And I was like, dang, that's crazy how you could own this and not even. So if we all didn't come to work, he couldn't make any money. So I was like, I know something that he doesn't know, but then he has money. So now all I have to do is be able to get to the level of having a shop and I could paint and have artists. And so, yeah, that was my turning point. So after I left Universal, I just started hitting all the swap meets. And after probably 8 years in 1998, I finally got to one spot and I stayed there for 15 years. And that was Anaheim Indoor.
What is one of your most favorite or most favorite memorial, airbrush piece have you done? Like something cool or something that you thought like, oh damn, I can't believe I did that.
I always think that. Back when I was young and seeing on Hollywood Boulevard and being on the level of the tagger on the bus and then seeing these dudes drive by with these cars with the letters on the back windows, I knew that I could get paid doing that. Once I did my first one, I was like, yeah, this is it. And I want to give a shout out to Blue. He was from my club, Ultimate Riders. I did his car and it came out on the cover of Lowrider magazine. And that was when I was like, there it is.
That's dope.
Yeah, it was dope. But then the editor, I want to, man, you guys, you editors out there, EARN. This dude put Earl. So yeah, my name is Earn. So there's a few magazines that the editor kept changing my name to Earl. So it's an inside joke. But yeah,
If any viewer wanted to get anything airbrushed by you, are you open to commissions?
of course. Of course.
What's the best way to get a hold of you? Instagram?
Instagram would be probably the most frequent. That's where I'm at the most.
Because I know you sent me a picture. I think you did a big bird on the hood.
Yeah, that was probably more recent. Shout out to Game Over Car Club. We did the Sesame Street Lowrider. I'm actually working on another one for him. And when we met, he was like, man, I'm going to have you do a mural on all my cars. So I'm on his third car right now.
Big bird. That was cool. How long did this piece take you?
My average time is 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
It really depends on the relationship. Right now, the one we're working on, it's already been a week and we're still designing it.
Gotcha.
So it can, sometimes people already know what they want. Sometimes it changes when they see it. So it really just depends.
Just two topics I want to touch on, bro, before we step on out of here. One, R2D bus lines. Can you share your encounters with the bus lines?
We definitely would just head straight to the back. I think for my crew, we were an annoyance because of the radio. We always had a radio. But then, yeah, we getting up on the back. I think when I realized that it was something big was when I got on a bus and somebody had carved their name into the part of the bus and I recognized it as a graffiti artist. And I was like, wow, it's deeper now than when we started because they could just erase it and you could almost be like, oh, I was on this bus last week. My name is gone. I remember the poster, you know? And yeah, once they started scribing, that changed the game.
Ooh.
That was a whole nother level because that's why I say graffiti is not just graffiti, it's vandalizing. So we would, yeah, literally destroy stuff. You know, once one person caught on to it, it just turned into getting it on glass to metal. Now these dudes are doing it on toilets. Like I'm not putting my hand on no toilet. I'd be tempted. Like I've been all over the place, man. I went to Cabo and met some breakdancers and sat there and filmed them. And I was just like, yeah, you know, I'm from Undercover Artist and, you know, introduced myself, but I didn't tag while I was out there at all. I'm not like, I mean, I don't need to do that. Like it's levels. Like once you get through a certain level, it's time to go to the next level. You got to beat your own self. Just because you got up and you destroyed a bunch of stuff in the city, what are you getting out of it other than destruction? And that's where I felt like I needed to grow. You know, I'm trying to grow. Like after I got the airbrush thing down, I started tattooing because it was just another thing. Like now I'm pinstriping. I'm not going to stop. Like, you know what I mean? I might have to start doing some clay sculptures or something, but I'm not going to just stay as a graffiti artist. Just think about it. If I could walk into the room with some famous oil painter, and yes, I know how to oil paint, he can't say he can do graffiti. So that means I have something up on him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Now, he may not care, but at the same time, I have can control, right? That is an art level, but you got to progress. You can't just keep it at this one level and say, this is all I'm going to do and just sit there and marinate in it. Most of these greats, they have different skill levels where they've done all sorts of art. And that's how I embrace it. I don't want to be labeled. Like now, what I tell people is anything art related, give me a call. I'm
Gotcha.
not just gonna put myself in a box. You know what I'm saying? Um, but if you look at some of the pieces, you could see from that very first one with the brown character all the way to the Iron Man. That's progression. That's what we all want. We don't want to just be able to say, "Oh, I could do a tag and it's dope." Make the tag a bubble letter, make the bubble letter a piece, make the piece a burner, make the burner a mural. Then after that, you might be on some TV backgrounds, you know what I mean? Like might be designing sets, something.
Gotcha. Last question I got for you, bro, before we get out of here. What is your most memorial graffiti story you have, whether it's from the past or recent, something that you carry with you that you could share with us today?
That's deep. And I didn't put no thought into this interview, so I wasn't prepared for that question. But I would say my most memorial memory was going into the airbrush into Anaheim and being in there. You know, I was in a whole different city. I'm claiming to be a pioneer of LA graph. This means I started in the early 80s. If you run into somebody that's like, oh, I did graffiti in LA and they haven't heard of me, that means they just, maybe they weren't in my part of town. But I feel like my name should have at least reached the level of them knowing. Because I'm in books. The Getty's book, there's 200 of us in the Getty's book. I'm in there. That's a staple. And that's one part of the story. The other part of it is once I was sitting there airbrushing in the swap meet, and some of those local artists that are from the 80s in Orange County that we'd never even heard of, when they walk up, I had to impress them. I had to put it down in their face. I'm not going behind no closed doors and painting. I'm painting right there, 2 feet away from them. And they could see the skills just come straight out. That was my turning point, and that's my memorable moment when I could show and prove with just making this whole town know who I am. And they're giving me props for being a graffiti artist that never tagged in Orange County. I never tagged in Orange County, but all of them know who I am from 20 years ago. These dudes are walking up to me now. They grown.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And giving me my props. Oh man, you inspired me. I'm trying to make sure I reach another level because I always pumped up, not really like I was selling a marker, but I wasn't saying, oh, go get up. Like I was like, oh man, you know, broaden your skill level. Make sure you get better. Like, you know what I'm saying? This isn't it. Like, this is not where you stop. You want to keep going. I wouldn't even tell my kids to go out and tag and get in trouble. You know what I'm saying? My oldest son is a video game designer. He's an artist, but he ain't trying to, I wouldn't tell him to go write on a wall. So why would I tell any of my customers to go destroy their life like that? You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
my memorable moment is being there for 15 years and coming out, being known as a graffiti artist with skills. And nobody can take that away. Can nobody? And if you do think I don't have skills, test it. Check my page out. And it's many levels. And you know what I'm saying? It's all funky, fresh.
100%. Again, brother, I want to really thank you for taking the time out of your day to stop in by the studio and, talking with me for a cool minute. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Of course. It's always good to reminisce. You know what I mean?
Is there anybody you want to give a shout out to before we get on out of here?
Chase, I see you, bro. Peace and blessings. It's all love. You know what I'm saying? Hey, UCA to the end.
Make sure to follow us on YouTube. We're starting 2026 strong. We got a lot to go. Stay tuned for more episodes. Stay tuned for more content, more shows. More to come. I appreciate everybody that keeps to support us. Till next time, guys. Peace.
Peace.